All right, the next game we're talking about is Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. That's Star Wars, Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, which was nominated by @JBennett13 on Twitter. It was developed by LucasArts and published by LucasArts for the PC. Earliest release date and territory appears to be September 30th, 1997, I guess in North America. This is the sequel to the very popular Star Wars Doom clone, Dark Forces, which is about... What is it about? It's about a guy who kind of does everything in the Star Wars like backstory. Anything you don't see happen on screen, it's this guy. So like he steals the Death Star plans at the first level. They're not very well guarded, and then like he fights everybody, and then I guess in this one he becomes a Jedi Knight.
Well, why wouldn't you? You know, you just you nip down to the local corner store and you're like, give me some of that Jedi.
Because you can't be a main character if you haven't held a lightsaber, apparently.
Yeah, you can. Han Solo only used it once.
Oh, wait, he did?
If you hold the lightsaber,
Yeah,
you're allowed to be a main character. That's the rule.
He cut open the Tauntaun, and to my knowledge...
Oh, right. No, that's right. It's been a while since I've seen Empire Strikes Back. I'll hand in my nerd card now.
Yoda was a main character who never held a lightsaber up until a certain point.
So he went all flubber everywhere to cite the blank check of Griffin and David. But...
Didn't he grab Luke's lightsaber out of Luke's rucksack in one of the movies? Like he threw it away?
No, he grabs a... Because that's always on Luke's belt.
I think
so he grabs a like a little weird like LED candle or something.
Yes, he does.
And like
something
R2 tries to get it back from him.
Hang on. Guys, wait. I know you want to talk about the original trilogy and the films that matter,
yes,
but we're
I do.
discussing some expanded universe stuff here. With,
right, so like I said,
series.
if you didn't see it in the first 3 movies, this guy did it. His name is Kyle Katarn. He is basically just like Doom guy, but in Star Wars.
I wouldn't quite tell him that short, just because this franchise is somewhat famous for having full motion video with acting and acting.
Yeah, no, there was some of that in this game.
Oh, and 90s CG special effects that makes the special edition look like...
Great.
It was
I looked at this when I was like, I remember this having FMV and it was great. And then I played this one again, I was like, oh.
It was only one game that
stupid, weren't we?
I mean, I'll give...
game that did that, though, wasn't it? I don't think the expansion did that either.
I'll say...
The expansion had FMV.
I do want to point out something, though, that I think that it's the Dark Forces games, although they never get talked about in the same breath as like Doom or Quake or Wolfenstein or even Rise of the Triad or anything like that. I mean, I think that they, although the level design is not quite as good as Doom, I think at least the first Dark Forces, I mean, it's been a long time since I played it, but I recall it being
for talking level design, I have this fresh in my memory, and Jedi Knight's level design is gorgeous, but terrible.
What about do you remember the very first game, like Dark Forces, the original?
I do. It had a really weird puzzle in the last stage where you had to like adjust these giant, like, I don't know what you would call, like giant slabs of level where you'd like stand back like, you know, several like, you know, meters away from this big thing. It was like a machine, and you'd have to adjust these like huge pistons, and inside the pistons was like a path, and you had to adjust them so that you could go through them as a path. It was pretty creative. Like, they did some interesting things.
Unfortunately, they kept doing exactly that for the next game.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got to start on this because this is probably my biggest problem with Jedi Knight, is how utterly obtuse a lot of the level design choices are.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand making the levels vertical. In fact, that makes for some really, really cool, very Star Wars-esque, huge room visuals, but too many times you end up in cases where you have to find some way to descend through completely non-obvious means, or jumping on a piece of the level geometry that you really wouldn't think you're supposed to even jump on outside of an exploit or something. It's just there's often low to no flow in the level design. 1 minute you'll be just shooting up stormtroopers, and then suddenly you'll be up against a brick wall trying to figure out how the heck you're supposed to get some high up or down, high up door, or across a bridge that turns out to not even lead where you need to go.
I think it's interesting that you almost do hit on that. This game is quite an early example of what first-person shooters would continue to do, and that's like set pieces. You know, the levels are very often, especially because Star Wars, as the series of movies, is obviously based on various set pieces that happen, and the levels of this game are built in that way. It's just like, here's the elevator bit, here's the giant dam bit, here's the marketplace bit, and it doesn't really kind of care very much about how they connect together, whether the layout makes any sense, whether you spend a whole bunch of time going down but somehow you end up above where you started or something. It doesn't care. And it's, I don't know, maybe people in 97 didn't care all that much either. I think like it was just like really cool stuff just to see.
I
this.
know I didn't care when I first beat it. Definitely.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that this game adds to the mix that wasn't in a lot of FPS games at this time is that it adds, like, you do Jedi stuff, which is, you know, you're fighting with a lightsaber and you have other powers, right? And like somebody who remembers this game better than I do, explain it.
I just beat it last week, so, well, for starters, you have Force Speed, which makes you run faster and is harder to control. You get Force Jump, which works like the Super Jump in Super Mario Bros. 2. Just for a caution of that one, if there's a low ceiling, you take a ton of damage from the collision. Okay.
That's oddly realistic, I have to admit.
Also, Force Speed suffers from the same problem. Hitting a wall will make you take a lot of damage.
I have to ask, is this like the first FPS where you have like powers that are separate from the weapons?
Wasn't there a couple of Doom games that you kind of had, like, there's some mage game. I thought that game had powers.
Hexen?
No, there's a different mage game. You could turn into like a frog. I can't remember the name.
Hexen 2! No, you couldn't do that either. Well, I will say I do appreciate the catch of being able to use force powers in this game. Although, there's a bit of a problem that you get to, through your actions in the game, ease towards light or dark side powers. But the light side is just so much blatantly better that you're just handicapping yourself if you go evil. In my opinion.
Oh, and just record those actions, or either kill civilians, or just actually choose a dark side power.
Yeah, it's pretty much up to you how that... when it comes to those force powers, a real criticism I have is how much this game really forces you to scrutinize every nook and cranny to find all secrets, because that's the way you're going to be getting all the points required for full force power, and not everyone's going to be up for that. I sure as hell wasn't.
Boy, do you really want, like, massive secrets?
I actually went so far as to do just that, with a guide, admittedly. It just makes everything so tedious to get your force powers.
Right, because, so this game, like, I guess if you're more familiar with the games that followed, and believe me, I am more familiar with the ones that followed, Outcast and Academy, where you kind of just get handed force powers to an extent, like, they just like, have some force powers. Cool, these are fun. And this one, it's like, alright, so here's this huge level, there are big chunks of it where you can't go backwards, because they're kind of just, you know, you fall down and you can't go back, when you go up something and it doesn't go back down, and they're giant, and behind that wall over there, that you won't really be able to tell, there's a force orb there, and if you go there, you'll get more force, but otherwise, you don't get
that's not actually how it works. It's not force orb. No, you have to find every secret in the level, and then you're rewarded 1 force point for finding them all.
That's how you get them? I thought you could get multiple force points a level.
Some levels will give you them automatically.
Ah, that's how I got them.
Yeah, there are some that you'll be given free of charge, but given that's how many levels there are and how few you're given through those means, the only way to actually max out most of your powers is if you bother to search everything.
Let's talk a little bit about these powers, because the interesting thing about this game and the Jedi powers is that it kind of took... It was created before a lot of that stuff was established, for sure. Because a lot of what we think of as, oh, that's a Jedi power, that's really... You're talking about like the the prequel films, so
Yeah,
like the second wave of Star Wars films that really solidified, at least for those 3 films, like what Jedi could and couldn't do. Except there's also some stuff that they do sometimes but can't do other times without explanation, like run super fast.
Yeah, the running super fast one is one I don't think I've even really seen in any of the films.
It happens at the very beginning of the first prequel and never again, even though it would be incredibly useful all the time. They just do it and then they never discuss it again.
In that movie, when they needed to run fast and then Qui-Gon Jinn died, that would have been useful.
Yeah, I mean, and now, like, all that, those limits are meaningless now because they're back to, like, it's just like every character who has abilities in the movies, whatever Jedi powers they have, they could be unique to that character. In the new movie, there was, like, the bad guy stops a blaster bolt in midair. And that's not because he's, like, the most powerful guy ever. It's just because it's suddenly, like, it's unpredictable again. But in a certain era of the movies, it's very video gamey in that there was a set, I don't know what you would call it, like...
If you didn't call it, it's basically RPG magic given and using the Force as justification.
You got the speed running in this game, right? You've
Yes.
got, you could shoot lightning, I remember that.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
Except when the final boss does it against you, well, it's a cheap, really hard-hitting attack.
I don't know how to imagine make Force Lightning suck. That's a real achievement there.
Meanwhile,
you
the
make
lights...
a dot in a game which has things that just kind of kill you really quickly.
Yeah, meanwhile, the light side just gets Force Persuasion, which basically makes you Gollum with the One Ring. You walk right up to people who completely ignore you and stab them in the face. The light side is just so much better. I don't
Can
see
I
why
point
you
out that it's not particularly light side to make someone just sort of stand around and then decapitate them? That's
why the
not
fuck is that a
really
light side power?
good.
Oh, sorry, F-bomb. It's like...
Oh, and you can blind people.
Well, I mean, again, like,
so
the whole,
arbitrary.
like, this is a light side power, this is a dark side power. That's a thing that exists because of game. You think of, choking people, that's a dark side power. Well, Luke does that it's like the first thing he does in Return of the Jedi. He, like, chokes out some pigman. You know?
Yeah,
So, and then also, like, the lightning thing is, well, I guess you only see bad people do that, but
the lightning thing is supposed to be inferred that because the Emperor is, like, I'm the god of the Force, lightning time. Like,
yeah, I mean, but literally the first thing in chronologically that you ever see anybody do in the movies that is clearly supernatural, 100%, can't be anything else, is when Ben Kenobi does the mind trick on the Stormtrooper, which is about as dark, disturbing, and evil as you can get. You are literally rewriting somebody's brain so that they do what you want them to do. I don't know.
And then after he says that, he says that Stormtrooper was an idiot.
Yeah, I should give some credit to this game's sequel, Jedi Outcast, which just gives you various so-called light and dark side powers all in a row, all in the same game, without having to choose a side. So there's no longer any required distinguishment.
Katarn can have all the powers, and he can be everyone, and he's the best at all things.
I just realized we haven't actually gotten to another major thing about this game, and that would be its implementation of melee combat in the first-person shooter.
I tried to bring it up, but I got bored halfway through that sentence. But yeah, okay, we might as well.
Okay, no, in melee, it's actually a bit more involved than some games of the era in that, depending on which direction you're moving, you'll actually perform a different attack. Like if you're strafing left or right, you will swing in the respective direction. If you click the Alt fire button, you'll do a double swing attack. Admittedly, though, it's really fiddly in practice. I find it's very hard to. One of the big issues I think is that the only time you ever have to really have a lightsaber duel is with one of the game's sets of bosses, so you're never really given any opportunity to practice with the final points outside of multiplayer.
Yeah, I do appreciate that this game makes the bosses at least kind of unique. I mean, and there's 6 of them. You usually don't get that much in FPS games, but I only found like half of them challenging. The guy who just kept leaping around everywhere, not hitting you at all, that was funny, but not challenging.
Yeah, not challenging. There's also, it's actually even better than Force persuasion, force pull.
Oh, yeah.
Because it lets you just drag the gun out of people's hands while you block with your lightsaber. It doesn't use nearly as much of your very slowly regenerating force meter as the persuasion does.
Yeah, once again, light side just... that's what I keep talking about. It's just like, I appreciate the verge of choice there, but it's like the game's trying to morally teach you, don't go bad or your powers will suck more. Although I guess...
Actually, that's the thing. Force pull is a neutral power.
Oh, right, my bad. Well, that being...
funny. It's funny because this whole concept gets elaborated upon in a big way in Knights of the Old Republic, which is on one of those games that's on the short list of the best Star Wars games ever made. And they do that too, where there's like, it's not so much that you choose like a side, like you're going to be good or evil, and that limits what options you have. Rather, it's like you can kind of do whatever you want, but if your choices in life are good, then you're going to have better, you're going to be stronger with the good side powers. Whereas if your choices in the game are evil, then your evil meter goes up, and then it's more advantageous to stick to the dark side powers. And that was a really good way of looking at it, because it's like, well, technically you can do anything you want, but if you're a bad person, that's going to make doing bad power stuff easier, and if you're a good person, that's going to make doing good stuff easier.
Okay, but I do need to finally get one other thing off my chest about this game, is that, well, I think it's a very cool game. I don't think it's actually a very well-made one, is the ultimate problem here.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, sorry.
Very authentic Star Wars experience, but it's just too unpolished to really be a great game to me.
I'm not quite sure if I would say polish. It's a substantially long game, and I don't think it's very buggy. It's more that they went, we're gonna make crazy big levels, and that's it. We don't care if they don't make any sense.
Yeah, the giant level approach is sort of like the reverse problem that I've heard some people have with older FPS games. Like, a friend of mine didn't like first-person shooters because they gave him a real rat-in-a-maze feel that he couldn't shake. This game has the opposite problem of how everything's just so big on a giant, massive scale that it feels like they didn't even have to really bother to, like, make the level work with the enemies. It's just, all of it's out there, all for the taking, and it just kind of runs, like, boring, having all these giant set pieces.
It's still a rat in a maze, it's just the maze is much bigger.
I am terrible at navigating levels in older FPSs like this, and that's sadly always been kind of a big problem for me, so a lot of the level design is interesting. Like, I like how vertical the first level is, but actually getting around, especially finding the secrets, is really difficult for me, so that kind of makes this a lot harder to get into for me.
It's also kind of cool in that this is one of the FPSs that still has a map in it that you can turn on, and you get a weird 2D representation of the region that you're in. I guess the chunk that you're in.
What else can we do with this? Because it's hard for me to even remember. I played this game when it was relatively new, but I keep getting it confused with Jedi Outcast, which was the game.
It shows some of the same level design problems.
Yeah, I want to say maybe Outcast is a somewhat more polished game. It doesn't really go as big with the levels. It condenses them a little more in some cases, but it also feels like a harder game because the enemies can just be real jerks. The Sniper Greedos in that one level especially. Ugh, gave me nightmares.
This one's kind of cool. I mean, if you want to situate it when it came out, this came out before the original Unreal. It came out before Half-Life. I think it came out just after Blood by Monolith. You know, same year as Quake 2. That's the period this game's sitting in, which is... So it can be quite raw because there wasn't that many 3D FPSs, I think, to compare it to. This was real groundbreaking in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it that. I mean, for its time, it actually did look pretty good, and, like, I appreciate just how much of an authentic Star Wars experience this is, even if you're playing with a total Mary Sue character who's now out of the canon, for the better, hot take. I mean...
yeah, not really that hot of a take. But,
okay.
I mean, but the thing is like, I feel like with the video games, with the Star Wars video games, like, as you may have noticed, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan, but I feel like the games have different priorities, and they should, they shouldn't really be trying to, like, contribute to the story. They should be allowing you to just do the stuff you'd want to do. Like, you don't have to, you can have it take place within this broader story of the movies, but you don't have to, like, say, like, oh, this counts, because it's like the point of a game is to be fun, and the point of a licensed game that's doing, like, such a beloved story is, like, let people do what they want to do. Like, it's the same thing with, like, Star Trek games. It's like, I want to play a Star Trek game where you have to, like, start out as, like, a fleet cadet nobody who works in, like, the mess hall, and it's like, no, nobody wants to do that. You want to fly the real Enterprise.
You are the captain, but also
you want to be there's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I don't think there's anything wrong with a game that just says, like, oh yeah, you get to do everything and you fight all the bad guys. Like,
I think that actually contributed to the popularity of this game, because it's not, even though it's technically kind of tied into the movies at the time, it really was you're the best Jedi now, and you beat everybody with your awesome powers, and you go to every Star Wars location. It's equivalent to Shadows of the Empire as well, where it's just like, here's every Star Wars set piece, and you're in them. Like, cool.
Right, yeah. It's just all it has to do is be fun and let you... I'm not saying, like, everything has to be, like, pure fan service, but you know what I mean? Like, all it has to do is be fun and let you do stuff that you want to do, within the parameters of the story, but also, like, just let you, it kind of lets you explore areas of the story that aren't really movie worthy. There's more like, like, what's around that corner? Oh, it's a, badly textured Sarlacc pit or something, that's what it's there to do. And it's
this game's an adventure in the Star Wars universe. Nothing else really, like, matters to it.
Especially at this time, like in 1997, this was like, we knew there were going to be new movies made and all that, but, like, this was really as much.
I thought this game, when I was thinking about it, this was must have helped build hype for both the new movies and the kind of classics and the re-releases of the original movies as well, because it seems to be the right time for them to really poured a lot of money into this to try and, really... Because I know that, like, the Lucas company wanted to, be multimedia and make games and make movies and stuff, so...
Yeah, I mean, there was the interesting thing is it's one of the first... It might be the first Star Wars game that LucasArts made that does not take place within the confines of the original movies.
That's a sort of for better or worse thing, though. There's just one fan nerd rage thing I want to go on. Luke is technically a much worse Jedi than Kyle, and yet in like later in the series, the Jedi Knight series, he's somehow Kyle's master, where if Kyle were an actual character, he would have been Luke's master, but that just means Kyle is too good and he has no flaws, and he's bad in the writing sense.
This is the problem that the movies themselves have.
Yeah, Luke actually sucks as a Jedi.
Well, no, I mean, I was going to say more like because he's the first one you meet, then you have to up the ante,
Yeah.
My point is actually more that Luke is a fighter pilot. Everything about his character in the first movie is more about becoming a fighter pilot with maybe some force power on the side. Well, and then by the third movie, he's having an utterly pointless duel with Darth Vader while the fighter pilots and Lando are blowing up the Death Star and saving the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, the thing about the first three movies is that they were very much in the vein of, like, we're going to make regular movies, which means that the main character cannot be godlike and have the ability to, like, basically fly and do whatever he wants, because it takes away from the tension of the scenes.
My point is more that he respects Wong during Empire Strikes Back.
Right, and it's but it's hard to do that again. Like when they did the new one with Daisy Ridley in it, and she has the power, the Jedi powers. They have her learn how to do stuff like the fastest way possible, which is basically like to read the mind accidentally of another person who knows what they're doing. And that's because it's a movie, and we've already seen somebody learn, and it's boring to show it again. Like, you don't want to go through the whole experience. Like, here's a new Muppet, now learn everything again, and the audience has to sit through it. And it's like...
What you're bringing me is those pictures of of her riding around on Luke.
Oh yeah, Luke. Oh yeah, Mark Hamill
Yeah.
riding around on Daisy Ridley's back would
That's
be
adorable.
hilarious. And I hope it happens. But like the idea is like you have these like super powerful characters who you establish exist and could save the day, but they're not. So like at the end of what is it, episode 3, where you just have like Yoda fight the Emperor for some reason, and he like fights him to a stalemate, and then he loses but doesn't get hurt, and then he's just like, well, I guess I'm going to give up and go live on a swamp planet. It's like, why? Just take another shot at it. You almost got him. Like, why not try again? But instead, he like apparently just lives in a swamp for 20 years, doing nothing.
Yeah, because the Force told him to do nothing.
I mean,
that's the.
But that's the thing. It's like even with like Jedi Outcast, it's like you go meet Luke Skywalker, and he's like, "I'd like my lightsaber back. I'd like to become a Jedi because I have to do this thing for some reason." And Luke's like, "Yep, the fate of the galaxy is in your hands. I'm going to stay right here."
yeah, you're right.
You know, it's like, why? You know, but that's that's a problem that it's okay, I think, for games to have, because the point of a game is to let you do the stuff you want to do.
Actually, slight question though. When Kylo shows up at Luke's store, he's specifically after revenge, and the galaxy isn't at stake as far as Luke knows.
Really?
Yeah, he's actually he's pretty much, this guy kills my girlfriend, I need my lightsaber back so I can go run it through him.
Yeah, no, I remember that, actually. The big bad of Outcast being a Tyrannosaurus Sith. Tyrannosithus. No, wait.
Which is actually pretty damn rad.
No, yeah, the sounds actually...
It's basically like a slee stack Jedi. You know, it's pretty cool.
Well, I keep going ahead.
We were talking about a
Outcast,
different Jedi Knight, I think.
Yeah, we might as well rank this thing.
I have to
rank
admit,
it.
I think Outcast may ultimately be a better game, but it is primarily working off of the framework of Knight here, so...
Well,
So, why don't we
yeah,
go
it's got a
with
lot of
Knight?
hindsight in its favor. I mean, Jedi Outcast, I think, is the best of the Dark Forces games.
I think it might be right.
Simply because it's
Not
like
Academy?
it has the most
Surprised.
refined lightsaber fighting stuff. And,
Academy's a lot of fun. It would be a toss-up between the two, I think.
Okay, so that said, maybe we should move on to linking now.
Yeah, so I'm thinking I'm gonna. I mean, I can't put this too high up there. Like, I'm looking at like in terms of like the game's quality. I'd say as an FPS, like it's a little bit below GoldenEye 007.
Yeah, it's not quite up to there. It's,
I feel like, I don't. I mean, and that's not like a great FPS. It's more like a great multiplayer game that has, you know, that happens.
It
to
had
be
some
an
important
FPS.
elements that sort of became more standard in games after, but that's actually kind of a little bit about what this game does. I will point out, and this shouldn't impact our decision process, but this game scored really high when it came out. Like, really impressively high. It hits on like 90-something on Metacritic at this point. They loved this game when it came out, just smashed it out of the gate as far as critics were concerned.
Like I said, I think that's like it's a combination of things. It's like the Star Wars mania is finally picking up again in a big way, because they were putting the original films out in theaters again, and there was going to be a new movie, and then it was also the first Star Wars game, I think, that takes place after the movies, and it was the first Star Wars game where you actually get to do Jedi stuff in any kind of meaningful way. I know there was like Super Star Wars and things like that where you were doing but it's not really the same thing. That's just a platformer type thing. This is the closest you could get at the time to like, oh, I'm doing the stuff that Luke does in the movies. I'm doing this.
Well, they deliberately called it Jedi Knight, I think, to really, make that point. Like, this is the Jedi game. This is where you are a Jedi.
I was not sure this affects things, but I do realize one thing we actually forgot, and that would be the soundtrack, which is, unfortunately, 2 stock Star Wars tracks on loop every level, which leads to some bizarre moments where you'll get a sudden scale chord out of nowhere.
yeah, it's a little uninspired to just use the music we know. I mean, they could put a little more originality into there. There's more track variety.
This game was a real CPU graphics hog. Like, absolutely, you needed a cutting-edge machine to run this game properly at the time. I think that they just deliberately just like, forget the music, don't worry about it, we're just put crappy good normal Star Wars music in there. Whatever, doesn't matter. Let's make the rest of the game kind of deal. Well, all right. So if we're looking at below GoldenEye, right? Like that's where you guys don't want to go above. So
it's got to go below Descent too, I think.
Descent's a lot easier to get into, I'd say. That's just me.
Descent is tougher, but I think it does have more innovation.
No, yeah, it's got way more. Like, Descent is not operating off of an existing beloved license, you know? True. Like, it's got to be a good game on its own. And as much as you got to credit a game like Jedi Knight for allowing you to do the stuff that players really wanted to do at the time, it is still basically fan service in a lot of levels.
And it didn't really influence first-person shooters afterwards either. Like, I mean, TIE Fighter influenced pretty much every later space sim with its, well, Internet Swing did with its power management system, but...
Yeah, I mean, well... Yeah,
I think of anything from Jedi Knight that really ended up in later first-person shooters that weren't also Dark Forces games.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, yeah, but I mean, comparing them to the flight sims is almost not even fair because those are the best space combat sims, period. They just happen to carry a license.
And I'm not really comparing so much as noting that odd anomaly. Well, there's a lot of innovation in Jedi Knight, that, like the use of magic or the attempt at a deep or melee system, that no one really bothered to try and copy.
I think it's more of a timing thing. I think it's because, like, at that time, like, oh, you're just about to do, like, why do it this way when we could have, like, just a straight up, you know, like, third person, like, Tomb Raider style game, and, you know, you can do those things.
What happened also, as I was saying, I think Half-Life came out the year after, and it was just that everyone started copying that style of game from
which is
that
easier
point.
to do as well, like. Not easier to make a game as good as Half-Life. That's not my point. I'm just saying, like, don't add in extra stuff. Just have more, like, bigger explosions and blaster things and.
Okay, well, let's go a little lower. We've got our kind of slightly off placement of Ikaruga. I think that Ikaruga would probably still be above this one. I think, in my opinion.
I'm gonna go so far to say Zergod Hand had better melee combat. So.
No, I'm not going to disagree with that. I do love my God Hand.
I wouldn't put it above God Hand. That's just me.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's got to go below God Hand. I strongly disagree with that.
Oh. Well, I don't know.
Ikaruga and God Hand. Let's say, yeah, that seems like a good spot.
Maybe above Shenmue.
Between God Hand and Shenmue, maybe?
No, I just said between Ikaruga and God Hand.
Oh, you did. My bad. Oh, shoot. So.
But I'd put it below God Hand.
Yeah, me too. I don't think we can put it above God Hand now because we got two people.
Oh, okay. Then I'm fine with that.
All right.
Yeah, I gotta say, yeah.
Because somebody said.
I would put it below Shenmue because I think Shenmue's more ambitious. I would put it below Mega Man Legends. I would put it below Jagged Alliance 2 and Bushido Blade, which is the closest probably game you're going to get to this.
But
and Flashback and below Full Throttle. And I mean, you got to put it. Like, come on, like it's,
I mean, all right. So, because
I'm gonna say above Goemon's Great Adventure, below Golden Axe.
Wow, that's actually a lot lower than I thought it would.
Gotta love the Golden.
I mean, I don't want to dump too much on Jedi Knight. I mean, we have a lot of criticisms for it, sure, but I still think it's a pretty neat game on its own merits. But I don't know. I haven't played it as recently as some of you have. GunHeart, what do you think if we place it that low between those two?
Well, I don't really have much of an argument against it because it's a cool game, but it didn't age all that great.
In terms of games we've played, this really is, when I played this one, especially for this, it aged one of the worst, it's aged the worst of almost any of the games I've played for top games. Like, I was just surprised by how arcadic this specific game felt. Maybe we're still pushing it too high.
Ooh. Maybe we need to put it, like, below, like... I gotta say, like, there's a lot of games on this list that I would rather play than this one.
Oh wow! I feel really bad now. I think we're gonna have to find a decent place that reflects what the game's merits are. Weighed against how much fan mail, hate mail we're going to avoid.
We're not going to get that much because there's other games to play instead of this one. You know?
I will, because I mean, part of the issue is that like Outcast and Academy are probably better, and I think Dark Forces might have been might have aged slightly better, even though you don't get all the Jedi stuff.
Wow. So this is the worst of the series? Shit, what a twist! I thought
I don't know about Academy. I've never played that one, but I would say I like it the least of the 3 Dark Forces games I've played, by a significant margin.
But we can agree that Outcast is better and would probably rank higher and more deservedly where Knight was. It's just...
I think Knight was very important to the Dark Forces Jedi Knight, and maybe Star Wars Jedi games, it was very important.
Yeah. Damn. Here, I'm gonna draw the line somewhere. How about between Crystallis and Pilot Wing 64?
All right, although I think Pilot Wing 64 is a much better game, I also think...
I really like Pilot Wing 64, but I don't think everyone would agree Jedi Knight is worse than it.
It doesn't matter what everyone thinks, it matters what the 4 of us think.
Yeah, I know.
But, look, I don't want to put Jedi Knight too low, because I think it was a good effort for a 97 FPS while people were still trying to figure out what 3D FPS was.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse and still made a lot of money.
That's mostly my basis for not wanting to place it too low, but I do agree the nostalgia barrier does not protect this one at all. I'll at least give you that.
No, there's a lot of
problem with
much better Star Wars
games is that there's always going to be another game later that does the same thing but cooler. And in which case it's like, well, that feels even more satisfying. Therefore, this old game is crap. And yeah, I don't know whether okay. So can we live with it in that position then?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you talk about, and this is interesting because you briefly mentioned it, but this is more like a simulation or a racing game in the sense that this is a Jedi simulator. You know, like they're trying to evoke a very specific thing. So obviously this game is going to age slightly worse because it's not being its own thing. It's also being Star Wars, the video game, and so it's always going to have to compare itself to every Star Wars game made after because they're all trying to deliver Star Wars, the video game, and that does weaken it, I think. That's the main thing that lets it down.
Yeah.
Star Wars, Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2,
Wonderful.
Crystallis, above Pilot Wings 64.